welcome back to another episode of We're Talking Shift. I got to tell you, I'm very excited about today's show because I'm going to be talking to someone that I've been following for a while on X, and I've been super impressed by his very positive and faith-based messaging and his advice on leadership and masculinity. I think we need a lot more talk about that. So I'm very excited that this is one guy that is really talking that up in all of the best ways. So Tyler Todt is a former professional poker player turned health and life coach. He's a devoted family man and a passionate advocate for faith-driven living. He inspires thousands through his content focused on fitness, fatherhood, faith, and personal growth. He's the author of several books, including Maximizing Fatherhood and 9 to 5 Fitness, and has shared his journey from the high-stakes world of online poker to a purpose-filled life grounded in service, discipline, and joy. Tyler, welcome to We're Talking Shift.
Man, Loree, thanks so much for having me on. First off, what a great name this is the best name of a podcast I've ever heard. When you sent over the details, I'm like, I got to do this one. This is amazing. And I'll just say kudos to you as well. I know we followed each other for quite some time on social media, and you're always so positive in could be a cesspool of negativity. I'm always better off for every conversation we have. So I'm super grateful for all you put out as well. It's definitely an honor to be here. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those very nice compliments. I initially started following you a while back. I can't even remember how I stumbled across you. I don't even know. It doesn't even matter. But I love your messaging, to men in particular, because being a coach myself for the past 17 years, I have become like kind of alarmed. It's beyond slightly concerned about the fact that traditional masculinity has been criticized, deemed as toxic, which I freaking hate that. But it's to the point where so many men, especially younger men, they're just freaking confused about, how they're supposed to show up in the world. What is their role? And I really want to get into that, but I also really love your willingness to talk about the role that God and faith plays in your life. But I gotta say, it wasn't until recently when I was preparing a little more thoroughly for our talk today that I learned about your professional poker background. So I was like, that one somehow got by me. So I guess I think it'd be fun to start if you could just kind of give us a little walkthrough about your transition from being having a successful poker career to becoming a life and health coach and all around kind of spreader of faith and goodness. So tell us about the man you were then.
It's probably every parent's dream, right? So I go off to university, and then I discover my first and a half year of university, that I have this talent for online poker. I just became pretty obsessed with it. I put $60 onto this site called PokerStars. I pretty quickly doubled that and doubled it again. Then I got really interested in it, bought a few books with my profit, started studying, taking notes. I get real into things. So it was probably 6 to 8 to 10 months later that I had made a year's salary playing online poker. And so I remember I drove home, and, again, every parent's dream, I knock on my parents' door and I say, hey, great news. I went to college to find a profession, and I found one. I dropped out. I'm a professional poker player now. And so,
how'd that go over?
Yeah, my dad was sort of like, maybe a little more understanding. My mom, not so much, right? She's in education. She's been a teacher for a lot of her life. And so I don't think this was quite the path that they saw. I will say, they were loving and accepting. And once I sat them down, and I ran online poker like I run a business, Excel spreadsheets. I could tell you my hourly rate in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. I studied off the table. I really approached it like a business, like a job. My claim to fame is I was a pro for 10 years, and people think of it as gambling. I lost 1 month in 10 years and made 7 figures doing it. And so I really enjoyed my time there. I'm a very competitive guy. I love the fact that I'm sitting at a table with you. It's socially acceptable to stare each other down and try and find weaknesses and exploit those weaknesses. And I still play a little bit, to be honest, here and there. It's just a profitable side hustle the last decade or so. But it really is a good competitive outlet for me. I wanted to play in the NBA. Sadly, I'm white and I'm 5'11", so that wasn't going to happen. But that was my passion, and I used to train 4, 5, 6 hours a day in basketball,
Mm.
and that was my junior high and high school. Then I graduated high school, went to university, and I played basketball, but it wasn't the same. It was pickup games and things like that. And I think poker came at that right time for me to pour myself fully into that. Now, I will say this: I won financially at poker. The reason I stepped back is I was losing at health. I was
Ah,
losing at faith. I was losing at relationships. I was losing at every other aspect of my life
yeah.
outside of financially, I would say. And
Mm-hmm.
so there were some big changes that started to come to my life when I was late 20s, I would say that
Okay.
I, like I'll never forget one time being in one of the best nightclubs in the world with one of the best DJs, and a couple of my old high school friends showed up and they were like, "Ty, you made it. You know, like you got the best table at this best." And I remember something hit me real deep that was like, if this is making it, like there's got to be more to life. I drive a brand new luxury car. I got a great home. I got watches and fancy,
Mhm.
but I never felt like a sense of peace
Yeah.
and a sense of purpose and joy. And poker just kind of kept me on this treadmill of like,
Yeah.
what's the next thing? What's the
Yeah.
next bigger game, bigger tournament, more money, more stuff? And it just seemed like this never ending loop. And I remember telling a wise preacher friend in my late 20s, I just asked him a question. I said, how are you happy? I said, you know, if I really have to admit this, I'm not very happy day to day. Everybody tells me I should be. I got a lot of toys, I got a lot of
Yeah.
stuff. I'm
Materialistic stuff.
successful, I'm respected in the thing I'm in, but I don't really have any peace or happiness. Or some days it feels like, what's even the purpose of getting up? Just to make a few more dollars when you already have a lot of dollars? That doesn't make sense. And so
Yeah.
I started to really unlearn a lot of those things. And then I started getting back into church in my late 20s, started
Mm-hmm.
praying for a wife, and then man, this beautiful woman came in into my city in Chicago where I was living at the time. And my buddy, I was lifting weights with him, and he said something to the effect of, this really cute girl is coming to throw a charity event. You should meet her. And I said, well, how cute? I remember I stopped mid set and I said, how cute? Show me a picture. And he did. And I literally asked for her number right there. And I just shot her a text and said, hey, we got mutual friends. You don't know me, but I promise I'm a normal guy. You can check me out on social media. Can I help you set up to this event? I'd
Oh,
like to just come early, learn more about your charity. I'll make a donation, and then maybe I could even take you to church the next day. And that was
wow.
that, to be honest. She came in. We hit it off. We took like a 6 hour walk after her event. We did go to church together the next day. I was late 20s and telling all my friends, I don't think I'll ever get married. And then, like, literally a week later, I'm like, I'm going to marry this girl. I can't wait. Like,
That's
five
awesome.
and a half months later, I proposed. And she's helped me a lot on my faith journey, too. I'd say at the beginning, she was further along in
Mm.
that faith journey than I was. And now, we get to
Yeah.
share that together
Yeah.
and raise our kids in that together. It's been a pretty
That's
amazing
the
thing.
best. That's funny. My husband and I lived in Chicago for a brief minute back in the 80s before we were married. And I remember a moment when we were at the bar and we're having a great time. And we're like, you know what? Let's never have kids. Let's just, yeah, you're in your 20s and
That's right.
maybe we'll probably, let's get married maybe someday, but, we're never a kid. Now it's 40 plus years later, happily married, two grown adult, amazing kids. It's funny how things change, right?
That's right. What's important at 23 tends to not be as important in your 40s, 50, I'm sure, and beyond,
Exactly.
right?
Thank the Lord.
Yeah, my dad always has this saying, he's late 60s, and he always says, a gift from God is that as men, we lose a little testosterone as we age, but we get a lot of wisdom. And
Yeah.
so it's a pretty decent trade.
It's true. It's true. But with all the advancements going on in the world of medicine today, you don't even have to give that up. You
You're
can
exactly right. Yeah, and
you
I got a lot of friends in their
go.
50s that are just injecting once a month, and they're as
Yeah.
vibrant as ever. I will be one. Well, I get my testosterone levels checked every year, and
Yeah.
when they start to dip below a certain amount, I'll be very open about that. I'll be the first guy on TRT for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot of great things about all of the amazing advances that we're capable of these days. But
That's right.
so what would you say, so you made this transition, you realized, if I understand correctly, that you were living a pretty materialistic life,
Very. Yeah.
and you realize this is not really fulfilling in any meaningful kind of way. So
Hmm.
you start to make this transition. What would you say was the hardest thing for you to turn around when you were deciding, okay, I need to evolve?
Yeah, I think that mindset of what success is, and I'll say as a guy, especially, I can't really speak for females, but I think anytime a guy meets another guy, it's what do you do, and
Mhm.
what are they really asking there? How can I size you up? How much money do you make? Like
Yeah,
that's just from the
comparison.
couple hundred years ago, if we were living, it was who's strong and can go out and hunt and provide, right? And so
Yeah.
there's still this like biological evolutionary thing I think that's ingrained into all men. How much can we provide, right? And so we value a lot of success from that. And I'll just be very honest, the first couple years of my marriage, I quit playing poker, not quit, but just didn't do it to the degree that I did. Well, I'd never had a job, so now I'm 30, I'm
Mm.
married. We actually had two doctors tell my wife she couldn't get pregnant, and lo and behold, we got pregnant on the honeymoon. So
Wow.
things so things changed really quickly. So I went back to college, went and got the first job that I really could. A lot of things changed for us in that short season. And I remember we ended up in marriage counseling 2 years in. And I'll never forget this. I looked over at my wife and I said, well, what more do you want? I said, I've been promoted 4 times in 2 years. We live in a great home. We have all these. And I'll never forget her looking at me. And it was almost like, hey, dummy, I just want you. I don't want you to work 6 days a week and never be around. I want to connect with you.
Yeah.
And so I remember kind of unlearning some of those patterns that success is only about another zero. Success is only about the car you drive. And really, I've been on a journey for decade now plus to learn that. And if you
Mhm.
came to our home here in Vegas, look, we live in a great neighborhood. We have young kids. I think it's important to be safe. But like, dude, our couch is secondhand. Like, we made our table. We don't have a lot. I sold all my watches a long time ago for I got a $50 used Fitbit now.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm very removed from a lot of these material things where I think I used to judge that by success. And now success to me is number one, how's my faith? How's my peace? How's my overall joy? Do I
Yeah.
have freedom of time? Can I just hop on a podcast with a person I really like, Loree, in the middle of the day? Like, to me,
Right.
that's wealth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Me and my
Relate.
wife take a walk together. Yeah, we take a walk together most mornings in the sun and just start the day off that way. That's wealth to
Yes.
me. So
Yeah.
I think there's different types of wealth, and
Mhm.
I've really focused away. Now, you have to have some baseline of money. If you
Sure.
can't eat, sure, you need to prioritize that. Once you get to a certain level, I think a lot of mistakes that a lot of people make are they just keep going. You
Mhm.
get a dopamine hit when you hit the next zero or you hit the next. So people just keep chasing, and often they'll foolishly trade health for more money
Yeah.
when that money doesn't really mean a lot extra after a certain point. They'll trade time, relationships, a lot of those things. So I've been really cognizant as I've gotten older to sort of, if you have a baseline of where you want to be, extra doesn't necessarily equate to a lot more happiness. I think a lot of health and time and quality relationships and things like those do.
Sure. Sure. So it's your values change. What you
That's right.
value changes, and I love that because we've been together a very very long time. So I recognize a lot of the phases that you just described. We've been there and done similar things. Parallel things. And you do it's such an epiphany when you realize that certain things that you valued so much before, or the way you were measuring success, your metrics change, and all of a sudden you kind of have this realization that, you know what, there's something there's a higher purpose, and there are more meaningful things than chasing more
That's right.
more of the material stuff, more of, and having success by your own definition is wonderful. But like you say, you don't want to be compromising the most meaningful, valuable things in order to achieve, that next level. And I agree. I think a lot of people don't realize, especially when they're in the thrill of the chase,
Yeah,
what that is costing them.
that's
Um,
right.
right. And you're right. I mean, you can make all the money in the world, and there are all kinds of statistics out there and data that show people that have the most wealth do not have the best health, the best
That's
relationships,
right.
the best peace of mind. All of those things that really
That's right.
are what you want to be able to feel like at the end of the day, you're just feeling really good about this blissful life you get to live, right?
Yeah,
Um,
if that were the case, look, every celebrity would be infinitely happy. And if you really want to peel back, a lot of those people are the most miserable people on the planet. And they
Truly,
have all the money in the world. They couldn't even spend it in a lifetime.
truly.
A real epiphany for me too is about 2.5, 3 years ago, I coached a legit billionaire, and I'll never forget our first coaching call. He told me, "I'm 49 years old. I'm worth 1.2 billion dollars, and I'm the most miserable guy on the planet." And he didn't. His wife left him. His kids didn't know him. He worked 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, often, and just his one of his best friends in life. I'm not gonna say his name, but it was Richard Branson, and he used to say, "All I do is compare myself to these guys because this is my circle. I feel poor. Like
Mm.
I only have a 50-foot yacht, and they got a 120
Oh
foot
my
yacht." And
God. Yeah.
it really, I remember journaling shortly after the call that there's kind of two ways to peace and contentment and happiness. Happiness is like a big word, but like if you would have asked me like what is success at 25, I would have been like driving a Bentley, right?
Yeah.
And now I think there's two ways to attain that. Either you grind really hard and you get the Bentley and it costs you a lot to get there, time, energy,
Hmm.
all these things,
Hmm.
or you just remove yourself from the desire of needing a Bentley to be happy and you kind of still get the same happiness as if you
Yeah.
drove it, but
Yeah.
you redefined it and you told yourself a different story in your mind of what success is. And so
Mhm. Yeah.
I've really gone that other way full circle is like, man, I mean, this shirt was given to me. It's one of my fancier shirts, and it was given to me from a friend off Twitter. You won't find like designer clothes and stuff in my closet anymore. And I used to be filled with that stuff, and it's
Yeah.
just that stuff is very lost on me now for sure.
I get it. Yep. Similar paths here. Totally relate. So, okay, God, I was just going to say something about that too. Well, first of all, I hope Richard is much happier now after spending some time with you.
Yeah, yeah, it was his buddy. It was like Richard Branson's buddy.
A friend of his.
Yeah,
Okay.
we had a few good months of coaching that I think
Yeah.
helped.
Or maybe it was asking for a friend.
Maybe, never know.
but but I think, one last point on that. I think because there is a value that we have, especially in our culture, because we live in a very rich society here compared to the most of the rest of the world,
Oh
right?
yeah.
But status becomes such a high value. And so I think that when you really get caught in that web of wanting to make sure that you are at this high level of status, like the wealthy, friend who's comparing the size of his yacht, that's such a terrible trap to get stuck in. And if you can get to the point in your life where that's not a goal and that's not something that you value above everything else, now you have such a much greater sense of freedom to just relax and enjoy your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think I had a really good preacher friend say this once is if you put all your hope in money, you're always nervous about losing it or if the market goes down or things change, right? And if you put all your hope in your physical body, you're going to die a million times when you look in the mirror as you age. Because let's just, as much as you want to work out and feel great, I can't do things at almost 42 that I could do at 26. It's just that as you go, that's just going to happen, right? And so to me, that's why I build the foundation of my life on faith as well, because I do think this life is very temporary. We're here. It's a really good book by John Ortberg called "It All Goes Back in the Box," and it's just, man, we come into the world with nothing, we leave with nothing outside of the people we impacted, the relationship we had with God, and ultimately, is Jesus gonna say He knew us after this world? And so I don't know. I think if you're not starting with that in mind, everything else is a fool's errand. Everything. And I think you can look, there's millions of cautionary tales on this. Jim Carrey is one of my favorite guys to look at for this. He has that quote that's real famous. I wish everybody would become rich, famous, successful, achieve everything they want to achieve so they could see it's all meaningless. And
Yeah.
if you're not happy driving the Corolla, you won't be happy driving the Bentley after a while, right? And
Yeah.
so I don't know. Again, it all does go back in the box. And I think if you're not grounded in something bigger than you and have a bigger mission and purpose than you're going to lack a lot of peace, lack a lot of joy.
True. I, absolutely. And it's very hard to make the best decisions for yourself. And if you do have a family, when you aren't have that grounding in faith and something greater than yourself and a larger purpose and a deeper meaning for why you are here. What are you doing? What is the
That's right.
point, right? So uh, let's talk about being a man in today's culture. Yeah. So in what ways, because I know, faith is going to play a role in part of this conversation too. So in what ways do you believe that men are dropping the ball? But also, to be fair, what are the challenges as you see it that they're up against?
Yeah, I think a lot of challenges. I think there's sort of two coins to that. There's one that a lot of young guys are growing up without dads.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a terrible stat. And if you look at different demographics, I mean, black community is just awful. And every single demographic shows that with present fathers, you expect better outcomes. It's not, it's a lack of masculinity that's very toxic. And for some reason, or I wouldn't say for some reason, I think I know the reason, but our culture has sort of flipped that up on its end. And so I don't know, I always say when the pendulum swings one way, it'll swing back too far the other. And so I think a lot of young guys growing up without any male figures, look, like I think it's like 85% of teachers are women.
Mm-hmm.
And so if a kid grows up without a dad and maybe doesn't play sports and have a male coach, he's spending all his time with women. And he has nobody there to tell him what it is like to be a man and discipline. And, I put a thread out a couple days ago that I can vividly remember a conversation with my parents where I said something like, "Hey, mom and dad, what if I accidentally got in a fight and I like punched somebody and he died? Would you like escape me out of the country and help me?" And my mom is like, "We love you unconditionally." Like and that's like a mom's like,
Yeah.
there's been so many times in my life where I felt like I was so low and my mom was right there. Like, "We love you. Let's pray." Like she's all, and my dad looked me in the eye and he's like, "Your actions have consequences. I would drive you to the police station and you would face the music."
Wow.
And
Yeah.
like, and I remember like even after a bad basketball game in high school, like I hop in the car, I'm 15, and my mom's like, "You know what? You tried hard. We love you. Good. You'll get them next time." And I'm like, "Thanks, mom." And my dad like looks at me and he's like, "You missed a couple early shots and you hung your head and you pouted and you let your team down. And more importantly, you let yourself down. What are you going to do about it?" And it was like this
Yeah.
this tough love kind of and I
Yeah.
think kids need both sides of that
They
coin.
do.
Like if you
Yep.
only get the dad telling you like, that's also hard too. That's why you need both sides. But I
Mm-hmm.
say all that to say I think the pendulum swung where a lot of these kids grow up without male figures.
Mm-hmm.
And then they might see a guy like Andrew Tate, or they might see some of these male influencers that basically just tell you success is sleeping with 200 women and driving fast cars, and that's what you should attain. And
Mm-hmm.
and to me, that's like, man, again, you're going to be on that treadmill forever. Because if you're not happy with how like they drew, I know they drove, I got 38 Bugattis, and it's like, bro, you weren't happy with 37, so you think the 38th is going to be the thing? Like,
Yeah. Right.
at some point, you got to learn and have something bigger than yourself. And so I kind of define, I don't know, manhood as number one, every guy should have a few things they're willing to die for at a moment's notice. And I think if you don't have that, you're gonna lag. Like somebody breaks into my home, I am so happy to fight to the death to protect my family. I
Yes.
think every guy should have that. I'm so happy if Christianity becomes illegal and they put a gun to my head and say you got to deny Jesus, shoot me. I know where I'm going, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
country gets invaded by another country. I don't care how old I am, sign me up, right? Like if we don't have freedom, we don't have anything. I think guys should have this really basic list in their head of things that are bigger than me. They're
Mm-hmm.
bigger than my happiness. And I think life is kind of, I would say, designed like this by our creator, that men are just created to hold space and protect and hunt. And we have to have things that are bigger than us, or we're on this never ending cycle of dopamine and chasing things, and it never ends. You never get off that roller coaster. And so, if guys don't have these certain principles in them, that
Mm-hmm.
man, these things are bigger than me. I might be super freaking tired, but my daughter needs to have a talk last night and she wants to play some board games. That's bigger than me. I do it. I don't
Right.
think twice about it, right? You have to have these things in you. And I think a lot of young men, especially, are just kind of taught do what makes you happy. Do what makes you happy.
Yeah.
And like, man, that's just not a great way for men to live. You need to be serving, you need to be giving, you need to be growing, you need to be building. And if you're not doing and focusing on those things, unfortunately, usually you just it's like quicksand. A few
Yeah.
steps forward, you sink.
Yeah. Well, and especially when you're younger, doing what makes you happy is
Oh,
usually, you know, it's not meant to be that thing forever. You're
That's
gonna
right.
right? I mean, I understand going out and getting a lot of experience, life experience, so that you can actually sort out your real values and what's important and what's meaningful. And sometimes you need to, get out and be a little feral to do that. right, right. But then you gotta take all of this experience and information and lessons and go, okay, now where is the wisdom that I can learn from this, what I've done, my experiences, my relationships, my successes, failures, my good behavior, my bad behavior, especially. And now it's time to grow up and be a man or a woman, as the case may be. It's time to grow up and evolve into, a better, wiser
Right.
person that can actually contribute to something beyond themselves, so their community, their family, just their own growth. So yeah, it's
Yeah. I think boys today too, we face like a hard dilemma because you can even look societally, like you see like the Daniel Penny case about a year ago where this guy's on the subway and a crazy person is threatening people's lives like with a weapon, and so he puts him in a he's a Marine and he puts him in a chokehold.
yeah,
And now you've got like 30-40% of the country saying we should convict that guy. He shouldn't. And I'm like, I always think to the people that say that, what if you were on that train?
yeah.
Would you want a guy to step in? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's this really weird sort of societal push of masculinity's toxic and Me Too and believe all women. And look, again, I always think it's a pendulum. If
Yeah,
we look back 40, 50 years ago, we probably needed to move a little bit towards let's believe some of the women, right? Like some
yeah,
workplace stuff is not good and some of these
right,
policies are not good, but I think we swung it way too far
true.
to sort of shame aggressive guys and
Mm-hmm.
shame masculinity and shame being strong. And look, I've been around enough gyms and this culture to know it's always the strongest dude that's the most in control. He doesn't need to prove anything. Like it's even like crime statistics on gun owners that have like concealed carry. Those aren't the people committing the crime. Like
Right.
they're confident that if something happens that they don't need to wield it around and prove that they're this or that. So
Yeah.
I think we should be teaching that like masculinity is a great thing. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
why we have our country. That's why we have all like,
Yeah.
uh, me and my brother just did a book report on Jefferson and all the Boston Tea Party. And like, these were 23-year-old dudes that just said, no,
Right.
we're not doing this. And like, so even the reason we have a country and that we're free and things like that is because of masculinity. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Now, the piece to that is like femininity and masculinity are a perfect fit.
Yes.
I mean, I there's this really weird notion of like your wife has to submit to you and do everything you say. And like, look, my wife compliments me in a perfect way. There's so many times I ask her perspective on even my business. She's so smart. She sees angles I don't. I hope that I compliment her in those ways. I think we fit together perfect.
Right.
I think a lot of times these roles don't work. And the reason divorce is so high and all these things is a lot of guys are I just think kind of confused on, well, do
Mm-hmm.
I be a man? Do I not? Like
Yeah.
I saw like a funny parody video of like what it's like dating nowadays. And like this guy's out to lunch and this girl tells him like, I love that you're a feminist. And he says, yeah, me too. And then the bill comes and he says, well, you're paying it, right? Like, I don't want to offend you. And she's like, well, and then a robber comes and starts to take her purse and she says, help. And he says, well, you're just as strong as I am, right? Like, why would I need to help? And
Yeah.
so I think we've just gotten this very silly thing of
It
like,
is
oh, boys and girls are equal and everyone's the same. And that's just, it's
stupid.
kind of nonsense. Like, of course, there's going to be women that are great at some things that are traditional male. Of course, there's going to be males that are great at some things that are traditional women,
Yeah.
but we have roles for a reason. We
Yeah.
have like, there's norms for a reason. And like, I'll be the first to say, my wife's a PhD engineer. I was a college dropout when we met. Like, she's smarter than me when it comes to doing the kids' homework, when it comes to even like fixing a lot of things. Like, my wife, she loves it. She's an engineer. So like, she's more on that gender norm. But I
Yeah.
don't think that takes away from, look, if somebody breaks in our house, I'm not going to look over at her and be like, hey,
Handle
you
this,
got this
honey.
one. It's okay to have norms and it's okay to have those things. And I think maybe there's starting to be a little pushback towards that. But I think for a while it was like, man, well, boys can't be aggressive. Boys can't be
Yeah.
this or that. And that's
They
just
can't
kind of
be their
nonsense. We
natural
need
self.
those people.
Yeah, yeah. You're asking it half of the population to not be what they naturally are. And
That's right.
and that's just stupid. It's
Right.
I'm sorry, it's just stupid. But and I think, part of the when you said I'm not sure, how we've gotten to this place that's actually it's so ridiculous, it's comical, except for that there's people that are, seriously going, I don't know. I don't know how I'm supposed to show up, poor guys. But I think part of it is there's again to use your metaphor of the pendulum swinging. It's like swung so far into people being driven from emotions and not using any logic anymore. We have this ability to we have this heart space where we can use our emotions to make assess things and discern things and know how to properly respond and react to things. But we also have the gift of logic and reasoning, and we need to be able to have the capacity to use both of those things
Right.
in the appropriate circumstances. And so now we've been in this place in society where it's all about, no, don't think about that in that way. Don't think. Just how do you feel? How do we feel about this? And if you're going to go by feelings all the time, you're going to make a lot of really bad decisions. It's just
Yeah.
the way it is. Emotions can be wrong all the time.
Often wrong, right? I mean, I'll be honest, 90% of the days or more when my alarm goes off at 5, my feelings are stay in bed, man. It's warm. Like, why would you get up and go push your body in the gym? That, like, but
Right.
you have to override that and say, well, I might feel this way, but I'm not going to be led by my feelings. I'm going to do what's good for me long term. And
Right.
yeah, there's become this real weird societal thing where we have to just like be
Mhm.
super sensitive to people's feelings all the time. And I don't really prescribe to that. I don't think it's my job to not offend you. I think it's your job to not be offended. I think I
Yeah.
can have my beliefs, and I think tolerance works both ways. And I think we've seen this really weird shift of we can make fun of certain groups but not these, and these are protected classes, and we all have to just like pretend that
Yeah.
men in women's sports is just normal and like it's no big deal that they're winning all the titles, like just get over it. And it's like, no, man, if you can just look at this objectively and like you said, use any kind of logic. For
Mhm.
all of human history, we've acknowledged men have certain strengths where there's a reason that men's world records and women's world records, we have separate categories. And
Yeah.
again, I'll say this is one of my favorite athletes of all time is Serena Williams. I
Mhm.
loved watching her, man. She was the goat. I love tennis. And I remember they asked her one time, like, how could you do against men? Like, could you compete with them? And she chuckled and she goes, I couldn't score a point on the 500 ranked man. And so,
Wow.
and it's like just to have that kind of awareness, like everybody should have that. And that doesn't take away from how great women are at their sports and things like that. But it's silly to think that, I always use this example. The highest paid female supermodel makes like $55 million dollars a year. And the highest paid guy male model makes like $1 million a year. And
Hmm.
we don't need that to be equal because
Yeah.
women are just naturally more beautiful. They can sell more beauty products. They can do those things. And so, yeah, LeBron James makes 300 million to play in the NBA. The WNBA players, their league loses money. They can't fill the stands. It's just not as good of a product because men are just more athletic. The game's faster. It's funner to watch. Whatever. All the reasons, right?
Yeah.
They don't need to be paid. We're not. It's not an. Everything is not equal all the time, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to just acknowledge that, and it's really just reasonable. And for some reason, like 30-40% of society has just been captured, and they won't admit things. It's like they won't look at this shirt and be like, it's yellow and black. If the people tell them like it's purple and blue, they'll say it's purple and blue, and it's like, no, dude, like objectively, it's
Right.
yellow and black. Just say what it is.
Hmm.
But it's really weird how there's like a third of the population now that just whatever kind of trickles down from the narratives, they'll
Yeah.
just regurgitate and they don't even think, and it's kind of scary. We kind of went through it with COVID. It's kind of
Yeah.
scary stuff, but that
Yeah.
that seems to be where we're at.
Well, it does seem to be, unfortunately, where we're at. But I'm a I'm a firm believer that you know where all of the where all of these weird difficulties lie is somehow providing opportunities for things to evolve into something better, at some point.
100%.
I'm like the eternal optimist. But
Same, 100%. And I do think, again, that's a pendulum swing that'll
yeah,
come back. And
yeah,
I see a big revival happening because I think a lot of people woke up, and I always have this analogy of every time you kind of grip something, if your hands are full, the harder you grip, the more things seep out. And I think,
yeah,
at the end of COVID, a lot of people were waking up. They woke up to the fact that the news is just nothing more than propaganda.
yep,
A lot of people woke up to like the government doesn't really have the best interest for me, that maybe they're lying to me about these things. What else are they lying about? I need to take individual ownership of my life because nobody's coming to save me. I think there were a lot of good things, and I see that trend
yeah,
continuing to go back, especially the circles I'm in. Like, you're not going to find a lot of people that believe this stuff. And so,
yeah,
I do see that trend coming back, and I'm like you. I'm an optimist. I see a big revival coming in our country. I really do. I see a lot of people's minds just rejecting this gray area and saying, no, there's black and white. There's truth and
right.
there's lies, and there's good and there's evil, and I know where I'm going to place my bet.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that is, as much as there were so many tragic stories that are still coming out around the whole COVID thing, but there were so many things that were revealed that needed to be
Yep.
have a spotlight shined on them in a big way that made people go, "Holy crap! I I didn't know this was going on, and now they know." So unfortunately, there were a lot of people that have suffered and are still suffering needlessly from that, and I feel bad about that for those people. But on the flip side, there's a lot of good and a lot of
Yeah.
things revealed that needed to be revealed. So we'll see how things move forward now. I think there's been a renewed sense of what's the word? Like people being more driven to go, you know what? I think I'm going to stick with the decisions that I feel are right. I think I'm going to be way more independent and less willing to be led and just sort of blindly following rules that don't really add up to me. Before it was like, okay, I guess I need to do this. Now it's like, hell no, I don't think so.
Yeah. And the
Right.
more people we have thinking, the
Oh
better,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking again, the optimal
Mhm.
thinking. Yeah. So, okay, what strategies, since you work with clients, you work with a lot of men, what strategies would you recommend for fathers who are aiming to build stronger relationships with their kids or even with their wives? Do you have some tips for
Yeah.
those guys?
Big thing I talk on for sure, because I coach a lot of guys who might be really successful at business and say, I'm kind of, yeah, me and my wife have had kids, and dude, it's like a once a month thing at best if we're intimate, and it's, like we're kind of in that space, and so
Yeah.
coach a lot of guys and help a lot of guys with that. I think number one, and I always say this, is you are the CEO of your family. If you're a guy, you need to approach it with that mindset. My wife and I have a huge giant whiteboard over there. Every Sunday, her and I sit together and we plan out our week together. And so we carve out to be honest, now we're at 3 date nights a week where we have sitters come over and they watch the kids. And maybe one of those will take one of our kids out and have a special, like, fun date with them. Because with 3 kids, it's hard to find one-on-one time. But
Right.
we have at least a couple dates every week that we carve out together.
Yeah.
She knows, like, that's my priority. That's the first thing we put on the calendar, right? I always tell husbands, first thing we put on our yearly calendar when we sit and look is a 1 week vacation without the kids. And our
Mm-hmm.
kids know this. Like, look, me and mom come first,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll come to you, because if we're not in a great place,
Yes.
everything else is quicksand. And so I'm very open to tell my kids, yeah, like me and mommy love spending time together.
Right.
I don't think it's good to always just be in mom and dad mode. I
Correct.
think it's very good to get out of that and be in husband and wife mode. And so my wife and I are real intentional about that and connecting in that way and making sure that we're staying where we need to stay. We always have the saying, are we 99 or are we 100?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if we're 99, we need to sit and address it right now, because we don't want to keep sliding down, right? And so how do we keep our relationship really locked in? Well, those weekly date nights are huge. Planning and taking an interest for all dads. Again, I always challenge guys with this because guys will tell me, well, I got up at 5 and I hit the gym and then I worked all day. And by the time I get home, I got nothing left.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've been there. I understand that. And I'm like, can you pull 2 blocks away before you come into the house? Put your phone down and just take 5 deep breaths. And just sort of visualize that energy that you want to bring to your family. And let me ask you a question when you're doing that. If it was your biggest client or your boss, could you find 15 minutes of energy to be with them and be locked in? I guarantee you the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just lying to yourself if you walk in and sit on the couch and scram.
Yeah.
Man, come in and thank your wife for giving your kids a great day. Give her a big hug. Tell her to get lost for a half hour. You're taking the kids on a walk. You're going to do a scavenger hunt. You're going to have a dance party, whatever the thing is, whatever ages your kids are, right? And so I call that the BDE, the big dad energy. You got to bring in the big dad energy, right? And too many husbands are just, I hear this and I cringe, like, oh, well, my wife's in charge of that. Oh, I'm not really sure my wife is doing, and it's, I don't know, man, I think that breeds resentment. Number one, when, especially nowadays, when let's just call it what it is, a lot of wives are working too. Yep. And so now the wife is like, not only am I working, but I'm running the entire home and all the kids' stuff. And a lot of husbands are nothing more than overgrown children. And so the wife feels like she has to take care of him too, and schedule all his and plan all his stuff. And so I don't know, it's not like a teammate feel, right? It's not a CEO of a guy leading that. And I think there always broods a level of resentment there. And so for guys to take that ownership piece of this is my family. And I tell guys, I run that just like I run my small business. I do a once a month audit where I literally sit down and I write, how's my marriage doing? How are we doing on date nights? When's our next getaway, our overnight date? Have I written my wife a love letter? Have I been intentional about thanking her for all the things she does? Let me just take a minute and be really conscious about this.
Right.
How am I doing in fatherhood? Am I getting to the end of the night and just too tired to read the bedtime stories, this or that? Do I need to realign some things, right? Mm-hmm. Same way I would run a business. I think about that with my family because that's the most important business I think I'll ever run, right?
Correct.
And so I think guys got to switch that. Again, it goes back to that first thing I was talking about. I sat in therapy and said, what more do you want from me? I've been promoted 4 times. I'm earning good money.
Right.
That's great. That's half the piece. That's half the puzzle, the providing and the protection and things like that. The other piece is really being there and imparting those lessons day to day. And like, I love nothing more than, like my boys are 4.5 and they're building a gym 2 blocks from our house. And so we go to parks. I mean, it's probably 20 times a week, more than twice a day. You just get out the parks. I always say I'm an A+ dad when I'm outside. I'm like a B- dad when I'm inside. So I get the kids outside a lot.
Yeah.
But we walk by that gym every day and my boys will tell me, I can't wait till I'm bigger, daddy, so I can get strong like you. I can't wait to go to that gym with you. And I think, man, you're doing something right if your kids are seeing you conquer some things and see it. Like I did 100,000 steps in a day a couple years ago. I woke up at 1 a.m, 100,000 steps for the day. My daughter came up to me a couple months later. She was 8 at the time and said, I want to do that too. Nice. And so it was maybe 6 months ago, she did 70,700 steps in a day at age 9. And she's pushing herself in that way. And I think it's twofold for guys. Like your kids need to see you. Like, don't tell them, oh, daddy, back in high school, I used to do this or that. Yeah, man. Like, you go eat healthy, but I'm going to sit on the couch and like drink beer and eat pizza, right? Exactly. Like that doesn't work. That doesn't equate. No. You got to be doing the things with them and they need to see you doing them too.
Yeah. It's so much about, and it's so weird that this is so hard sometimes for people to see until you actually spell it out for them. It's just what you're demonstrating. You have to demonstrate. Here's what I do, and this is what's normal. So it's normal for you to think, as I grow up, I'm going to go to the gym. As I grow up, I'm going to walk, 100,000 steps. As I grow up, I'm going to have a partner that is as cool as my mom and my dad's, relationship. Yep. It's they're picking up everything that you're doing. Forget about, and that means they're picking up everything that you're not doing, or everything that you're doing that is not going to be of any benefit to them. So what you're demonstrating is just so critically important. And I mean, you guys are checking all the boxes in all the best ways. And
I mean, we try really hard. And I like to say this, look, like, my wife's parents are awesome. My in-laws, they've been married, I think 47 or 48 years, and they provide a wonderful example and they're great with our kids. And My parents, I just honor my dad so much because he came from a really hard home, and just didn't have the benefits that I have. And he was following that path until my mom got pregnant with me. Like he was an alcoholic. He was
Mm.
not a good guy for the first several years of their marriage. And my mom basically gave him an ultimatum. And he'll say to this day, he swapped a drinking addiction for a fitness addiction at age 27. And the reason I work out, my sister works out, my kids work out, her kids all work out is because my dad was that guy. And it was just normal. Like we got home from school, my dad got home from work and he's like, "Hey, I'm going for a run. You guys are going for a bike ride. Let's go."
Yeah.
Hey, we get done with the run and the bike ride. Let's go run in the yard. Let's go play let's go play catch.
Yeah.
Let's go. We were just always outside playing and that was very normal.
Right.
And I think if you think about like a lot of the way a lot of kids are raised nowadays, my daughter's in fourth grade. She's one of 3 out of 60 kids that doesn't have her own phone.
Mm.
So 57 out of 60 kids in fourth grade have their own phone. And I see them even walking out of class, just their heads down.
Yeah.
I think, man, that they might just go home and they're just sitting around all night.
Right.
And it's like, it's just been normal ever since my kids are literally 6 months old. Like we're outside. I'll push you in a scooter for hours and we'll talk about the things we're seeing. And
Yeah.
it is going to be normal to be outside. And I don't care if no one else is. I don't care if we're the only people at the park. Like
Yeah.
we've had days where it's 105, 106 degrees and like we're walking to the park and my boys were 3. And I'd have somebody on their porch saying, "You shouldn't take them out there. It's too hot." And I'll just say, it might be too hot for you. It's not too hot for us. We got waters. We'll sit in the shade and we'll be fine.
Right.
Like I'm not trying to raise a bunch of just like, oh, it's always got to be 68 and 72. And like, no, man, like that's not life.
It's weak.
And yeah, it's just, I don't know. I think whatever we make normal, that's what I tell guys a lot. That's what's normal. It was normal for me to play outside every night after school
Yeah.
because that's what my dad did with us. And so it's going to be normal for my kids that's just what we do.
Right.
We go play and we get outside and we take little adventures and this or that. So you kind of set what's normal. And that's a cool gift to be able to do that for your kids.
It really is. I love that. So, okay. Back to your faith for a minute. Do
Mhm.
you integrate your Christian beliefs into your coaching practices, or do you kind of, weigh it depending on how receptive the client is?
So yeah, I think both. Like number one, I'm very upfront that hey, this is the foundation of my life. It's hard for me to talk about certain things without talking about that. But I will say along the way, one guy in particular I had hire me and say, "I just want to lose X amount of weight and be a better husband. You cannot talk about faith. I'm not open to it." This was a couple of years ago. I said, "Sure, of course, man. I'll respect that, right?"
Right.
Now, this is a cool story because right when he said that, I started praying for him. And it wasn't 6 or 7 weeks in where he called me and he had lost 12 or 13 pounds. Things were going better. But he called me and he said, "Man, I'm in a huge fight with my wife, this or that." And he said, "I'm at rock bottom again. Tell me about faith." And we got to have a great conversation. If I fast forward a few months later, he got baptized, started going back to church. He ended up baptizing his wife and his 2 kids after that. And so it became a great thing. That's how I view my faith. I'm never going to push it on you.
Yeah.
I'm going to be me. I'm going to be unapologetic about it because that's who I am. And again, tolerance goes both ways. I lead men's retreats. I've had guys come on my retreats. We had one that was a Scientologist, and I love the guy. He was respectful. I told him we're going to pray a lot, and we pray to Jesus. He said, I'm great with that, man. And I asked him questions about his faith and things like that. And I think this, like, I'm not going to cancel you because you don't believe what I believe. We can be respectful. And I just go back to Jesus, man. He hung out with people that didn't have faith. He was kind to them.
Right.
But he never sat there and apologized and said, "Well, I'm not going to pray because that might offend you." Like, no, I'm going to be me.
Yeah.
And if that vibes with you, that's great. Now, again, I think I've hosted 12 men's retreats now.
Mhm.
And we have 8 or 9, 10 guys that come to each one. I would guess 95% are Christian that come. Just because if you're following me and you see the stuff I put out every day, you're probably at the very least open to that.
Yes.
And so you're just going to kind of attract in this world what you put out, right? Like,
Absolutely.
you're probably going to attract like higher quality females around you that are also into fitness, that love their husbands. Like, you're probably not hanging around people that are just complaining about their husbands all day. "Oh, he's terrible. He doesn't," because you don't do that. You don't attract it, right?
Correct.
So I think that's kind of how life works. So most of the people that come to me are like that, but I would never tell somebody, "No, I won't coach you until you're a Christian," or there's never anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I have that talk too with my clients. I just ask them right off the bat, do you have any particular religion or spiritual beliefs, or are you open to that, or is it something that is not interesting to you? And then that informs me of how I'm going to language certain things,
Right.
right?
Yep. And
'Cause
and I think the cool thing is for the non-believers, even you might plant a seed just
exactly.
by, hey, why is Loree? The world is a mess and she's always at peace. Like, what does she have? Like, there's certain things that are
Yeah.
going to be going on in there that might not even come to fruition. You might be done coaching them. A few years later, they might remember that and think, what was different about
Yeah.
her?
Yeah.
And I kind of think that's the biggest thing Christians can do is,
Plant seeds.
yeah, preach the gospel every day and speak about it seldom. That's kind of like I should be able to live my life and people should be able to look at me and say, what's different about that? Why is he always
Right.
happy? Why is he always
Yeah.
joyful?
Yeah.
Why is he always calm?
Yeah.
People should see that and just see that there's a difference, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Which kind of comes back to what are you demonstrating? Just how are
That's
you
right.
being in the world? How are you walking through life? What does that look
Yeah.
like? And how do you make people feel as you are, you know, as you're moving through your day, what are you doing, as you're interacting with
Mhm.
people? How do they feel when they're in your presence? And it is so much about just simply, you don't have to say anything, but what are you demonstrating?
That's right.
What is the energy you're putting out? And, because we're energetic beings, everybody picks up on it.
Oh, yeah.
They pick up on something, like you said, even if they're not consciously quite sure or aware.
Yep.
But yeah, there's little energetic seeds that are being sprinkled, and some of them will
100%.
germinate, some won't, but that's up to the individual, right? So
And I think, to be honest, that's why I love Twitter so much. When I first started Twitter 5 years ago and had 0 followers, I put in my mind and just said, like, I want to be this guy and I'm moving towards this guy. Let me just pretend 1 million people are watching me every day. Would I sit on the couch at the end of the night when I'm tired?
mm,
Or would I find that energy, take that breath, and lead my kids on a walk? And so
yeah,
I always tell people there'll come a day where I'll probably just be done with social media and God will tell me to go a different direction. That's fine. But
yeah,
I think that Twitter just makes my life so much better because there's definitely times where like the alarm goes off and I'm like, I don't want to get up. And I'm like, what if a film crew is just watching? What if 1,000 people were watching me? 100,000 people right now? Would
yeah,
I snooze and be okay with it, or would I get up and get after it? And would I
yeah,
be the dad that's like, get lost and just get out of my hair? Would I be the dad that's like getting on the ground and playing with them and taking them to the park again? And so I think a lot of people use social media wrong where they like talk down to people or this or that. I just use it as like, hey, I don't really feel like doing this right now, but let's get up and go. And I
yeah, yeah.
pretend like there's people watching me and I'm like almost, I want them to see that I'm a little different too, right? And so I
Mhm,
use social media in that way to sort of better my life. I don't, people
mhm.
like it or don't, I don't really care about that, to be honest. But like, I
Yeah,
just like to put out content that makes me better. And hopefully, if you resonate with that, it'll make you better.
that's cool. That's very cool. I love that. Which is why I think, yeah, so many people are really enjoy your content, because it's just you being you.
Yeah, there's no people want to hire me and like, how do you grow social media or this or that? I don't know, man. Just be you. I wake up and I pray a lot and I tweet. I don't know what it is. I don't have this like magic growth strategy or
Right.
anything like that. I don't know. Be you. That's your cheat code to life. Nobody else can be you.
Exactly. Well said. So, how, okay, switching gears a little bit here. Are there any, um, I guess you could say, parallels between the strategies used in poker and those in personal development or your coaching?
Yeah, I'm so grateful for poker in a lot of ways. Poker's all about pattern recognition. And so I've
Mm,
had many clients tell me this a lot where I used to play 24 games at a time of poker, and so I'm processing so much information quickly, and I need to find patterns and learn how to exploit my opponents and a lot of nerdy stuff I won't get into, but like I needed pattern recognition very quickly, and so
mm,
I'm able to hop on a lot of Zoom calls and very quickly identify, ask a few questions, and see some of those patterns, and then ask a few questions to sort of lead where I want to go. And I really think that baseline of a decade of poker and pattern recognition, what I used to use against people, oh, man, when I put him in this spot, he folds under pressure a lot. Well, okay, now I can kind of flip that and say, well, how do I use that to help this person? And it's
yeah.
such a more fulfilling thing. But I do think there was a lot of a baseline of poker that's helped me be a lot better coach.
Mm,
And then I've also just been addicted to self improvement for
mhm,
6, 7 years. I mean, you'll be hard pressed to find many books on the topics that I haven't read and taken notes, and a lot
yeah.
of the bigger guys podcasts, coaching myself. I'm a
Yeah.
big believer in coaching. Even though I've coached 1,000 guys, I still have my own coach and things like that. So
Yeah.
I always want to get to new levels and keep raising the standard myself.
Mhm.
That's going to make me want to bring anybody up around me with me. And so, yeah, I think my mom jokes now. She's like, I'm glad you played poker. It was hard as a parent to see all these, like these things happen. But she's like, I see that God even used that in your life. And even some of the guys that have found me on social media and I've been able to minister to knew me from poker back in the day. Because back in the day I was a decent, I wasn't like one of the guys on TV, but I would say I was a notch below the most popular, maybe a notch and a half below the most popular guys. And so I was pretty well known in the community. And I've had guys come back and find me on Twitter, be like, dude, you were Ty Romper back in the day. Now you're doing this stuff, and that's led to some cool things too.
Very cool. Very cool. So, Tyler, do you have any like upcoming projects or goals or anything big that you're
Yeah.
excited about that you want to talk about?
Yeah, always. So you might laugh at this and you'll get this because you're in the personal development space too. But I think I've been rejected by 50 publishing companies now. I wrote a book. I spent like 13 months grinding every day, writing, been
Right.
told no. And I'm like, great, that's great news, because now it just makes me become a better writer and keep pivoting and keep iterating. So sometime in the next decade, I'm going to get one of these people to say yes. I'll
Good.
have a book coming out, like 300-page book at some point.
Awesome.
A big thing I'm doing here in August 28th, 29th, and 30th. I mentioned I've hosted like 12 men's retreats. I'm
Mm-hmm.
putting together a big conference. This is for men and women. We've got Sahil
Okay.
Bloom coming to speak. We've got Gia McCool, Harrison, Save Your Sons, Nick, Chosen Leader. We got a lot of big names in the spaces that are coming out to be keynotes. We rented an awesome space. We're going to do hikes, ice baths, make it kind of a physical conference as well. Climb
Okay.
up some sand dunes. But I think it'll be an amazing conference. We got like 40 some people signed up already. Probably get another 30, 40 more and make this sort of the hope is an annual thing where people can come. Online is amazing. I'm grateful for the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. Nothing beats being in person with 60, 70 other people that are like minded like you. And so I host that every year. This is the first one. It's been a lot of work, but I'm looking
Okay.
forward to that for sure.
That's amazing. Where is it going to be?
In Las Vegas.
In Vegas. Okay. And that's
Yep.
coming up in August?
August 28th, 29th, and 30th. And look, it's less than $1,000 for everything, for meals, for all the stuff. So the men's retreats got to the point where they cost a lot of money. We like did one with Zuby last year, if you know
Cool.
Zuby,
Yeah, yeah. I
and it
love them.
cost a lot. Like if you're hiring those people and renting these mansions. And so we wanted to do one where, man, if you got 700, 800 bucks, you can come to this thing
That's
and still get
amazing.
around all these people.
All right. Very cool. We'll be sure to include that in the show notes for people.
Thanks.
And where else? Where is the best place for people to find you?
Man, it's definitely Twitter. I'm on Twitter probably 6 days a week for sure.
Okay.
Just Tyler Todt, Ty Romper. They're on YouTube. I think I got like close to 250,000 people or so that have clicked follow now, which I'm super grateful for on Twitter and 60 some thousand subs on YouTube. I enjoy putting out content there as
Mhm.
well. And so yeah, come find me there. I think LinkedIn we've been growing decent on over there for the last 6 or 7 months too. But main
Nice.
spot's Twitter. Shoot me a DM, connect. I love having conversations with people and growing together. It's the best part of life. One of the best
Yeah,
parts of life.
for sure. I love it. We'll make sure that those links are in the show notes so people can easily find you for sure. Any final advice before we sign off that you would like to leave our listeners with regarding, having a vision really of what's possible in their life?
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful things I've done over the last 6, 7 years is if you feel stuck, and I remember feeling really, really stuck.
Mm,
Many years ago, I was 20 pounds overweight. My wife and I weren't in a great spot. There was just a lot of things, and I felt like I was always spinning my wheels. And one night I just got out, and anybody who knows me makes fun of me for this. I probably got 50 of them. Just a notebook, 50 cents. I'm just real big in putting pen to paper
me too.
and just sitting down and just I talked about like I audit my life. I literally every month look at how's my faith doing, and I'll take some notes and I'll pray and I say, God, show me how I can make it bigger, how I can grow month over month. How's my family life doing? How's my fitness doing? How's my
Hmm.
finances doing? Business, all these. So just being really conscious. Like
Yeah.
I think I read it's like 97 to 90% of our lives we're subconscious. We're just on
Yeah.
autopilot, and that's why
Exactly.
habits are so important. But I look at it as a competitive guy. What if I just do some breath work and take that 5, 6 deep breaths and I move to conscious a little more and I drive my life where I want to go and I define success for me, not what the world tells me or not what mom or dad, whatever, but what success is for me. And so being really conscious and intentional about, every action you make, you're 1% better, you're 1% worse.
Yeah.
And so being really mindful of all the things you're doing every day that are you driving your life towards where you want to go?
Yeah.
I really believe in a year or two of really hard work and focus, anybody can get to most 99% of the limits are mental.
It's
You
true.
can get there when you decide you want to get there, and if you're willing to pay a price to get there.
I love it. That's perfect. So you have been amazing.
Well, this
Thank
time flew by. I'm looking at the clock, and I'm like, I got another call here in 5 minutes, but I
I
thought we'd been on
know.
for about 20 minutes. So,
I know. So I've been watching close because I knew you had a hard exit time here. But I'm so grateful for the time that you spent.
yeah, me as well. Thank you.
Yeah, very generous of you, and everyone else. Thanks for hanging out with us. Go make some epic shift happen in your lives. And see you next week.
Thanks, Loree. Appreciate it.